Hi, this is Alicia with the FSW Writing Center, and in this video, we're going to talk about how to include quotes properly in your writing. So when you're using sources for an academic essay or for any piece of writing, you want to avoid what's referred to as quote bombing, throwing in a quote with no context or explanation so that your reader is left sitting there wondering what on earth the quote has to do with the point that you're making. One way you can make sure that you're not quote bombing is to use the ICE or ICE method. In this method, you introduce information from a source in your own words, cite or summarize it properly, and then most importantly, explain why it matters in your paper. Let's look at an example. We'll say I'm writing an analysis of Edgar Allan Poe's use of figurative language in a few of his stories. Here's a line from The Telltale Heart that I think is particularly interesting. The first thing I need to do is introduce the quote. Here's what I'll say. Early in his short story, The Telltale Heart, Edgar Allan Poe uses a simile to foreshadow later events. Speaking about the old man, the narrator says, and then it'll continue. As I'm writing about multiple Poe stories, I need to say which one this quote is from. My paper focuses on figurative language, so it's a good idea to tell the readers that this sentence in particular includes a simile, comparing two things using like. I'm also letting them know this quote is important because it includes foreshadowing, which is a literary term for hinting at something that happens later. Finally, as a lead into the quote itself, I give some context from the story. This line is said by the narrator as he talks about the old man. Next, I'm going to include the quote itself and cite it. His eye was like the eye of a vulture, the eye of one of those terrible birds that fall upon the dead body and pull it to pieces. I'm using MLA for this paper, so I have the author's name and the page number at the end, but obviously you should cite using whichever style your professor requires. Finally, I am going to explain why this quote is here. This line plants the anticipation of death and dismemberment in the reader's mind, both of which play important roles later in the story. This explain piece is really important because it tells my readers how to understand this quote. Notice that what I say also connects to my introduce section. I mentioned foreshadowing there, and now I am explaining it in more detail. Poe uses this line to point to events at the end of the story and to set the mood. Finally, here is the complete iced quote. From here, I can move on with my own ideas in the paper, continuing to explore how Poe uses figurative language in his writing. Each time I pull a quote from Poe or from any other source, I'll apply the ICE method and make sure that the information is introduced, cited properly, and explained. Thank you for joining me to talk about quote integration. I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the FSW Writing Center.